Blake, have you ever committed a felony? Because I really feel like this is the moment to confess.
Well, my high school government teacher always said, if you aren't convicted of something, you didn't break the law.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, the only person at the company that has eaten his weight in white cheddar popcorn. And I'm here with my co-host, a man who would never inhale an entire bag of popcorn in 5 minutes, Toby Walters.
I've tried to inhale too many popcorns. Is that how you say it? Too much popcorn. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
it must be early in the morning here. But I've quickly realized, so the only popcorn I really want to eat is movie popcorn.
You haven't had Smart Food white cheddar popcorn?
I have, and it's good, but like there's something about that, butter gasoline that you pour on the popcorn at the movie theater that is just, it
Oh, it's magic.
Gets to the core of me, but it also gets to the core of me in a way that like after 5 bites, I pretty much have a migraine.
Oh, you having those migraines over anything you eat is a tough life.
It's like poison. Let's be honest. It's so good, but it's straight up poison to our body.
Yeah, I mean, it hits you in the head. It hits me in places I won't say on a public podcast. That's why I switched to Smart Food. Anyways.
Okay, so let's talk church planting, Blake. Have you ever been part of a church plant, Blake?
I haven't. The closest I've gotten to a church plant is planting the popcorn seeds to grow them.
Okay, so in my 20s, I thought it was a bright idea to be the worship pastor at a church plant. It sounded super fun.
Still does.
Yeah. So I was the everything worship, tech, production, all that stuff, because, there were 4 of us and I was the only one who knew anything. Actually, no, I take it back. We had a video production guy.
Do you have enough space in your closet for all those hats?
No, not at all. But what we did have is my wife and I had a storage room we lived in a granny flat, and we had the storage room. And so our entire PA system was stored in that storage room. And every Sunday morning at like 5:30 in the morning, the guy who volunteered to help us set up the system and mix everything would show up at my house with a trailer. We'd load it all up. We'd drive it over to a school, because that's where church plants
I'm sure you were having such a great time loading all this up so early. You loved that, didn't you?
I loved getting up early when I was 23 years old.
Best life.
So the greatest moment for us was when the school said, hey, we have a storage closet on campus, and you could store your system there. And I thought, this is the best gift God has ever given to mankind, is that I can now sleep in like 45 minutes later on a Sunday morning.
Shelley, you've been replaced by a storage closet.
Yes. So there was one moment where it was a week where my wife and I took a vacation, and the church plant was very gracious to give us the week off and have somebody else lead worship. And so I was in Vancouver, Canada, roughly 1,100 miles away from San Diego, California, where my church plant was. And I get a call at about 7 a.m. on the Sunday morning.
At least that's an hour and a half later than the original wake up.
Yes. And I am awoken out of a wonderful sleep with the question of, where are the keys to the storage closet at the school in which we house our system?
But they were on your key ring on your nightstand, weren't they?
They were luckily on my keyring at my house in San Diego. So I called up the person that has to deal with all my mistakes, my dad.
Oh, yeah, that's my job now.
Yeah. So Dad ran over to my house to get the key. And in the meantime, our worship team at the church plant began committing a felony of breaking into this school storage closet to retrieve the system. And what it was like a, 8-foot gate and metal fence, and they begin like hoisting people over and then start passing the system piece by piece over this fence. And they finally got everything except like the main PA speakers, which were 120 pounds each. There was no way they could lift them up over this fence. But luckily the key arrived in time.
I don't think anybody at Church Gear can complain about carrying gear anymore, because now this sounds like a nightmare.
Yes.
Hoisting all that over the
So
fence.
Fast forward one more time, and we got our own building. And I thought, oh my gosh, we've died and gone to heaven. We're going to have our own space. But in order to like line up Sundays where the school said, okay, you need to be out on this Sunday. And the new building said, okay, you can get in like 3 days beforehand to start setting up. And so we started thinking to ourselves like, that's not realistic to get in 3 days ahead of time and set up an entire like install system.
Are you kidding me? I could do that in like half an hour.
Yeah, I'm sure. All of our integrators listening are like, biting their fingernails right now thinking about this.
Or they're like, I want to hire that guy.
So committed another felony. Breaking and entering.
Can you stop committing felonies on the podcast?
So our church plant straight up did breaking and entering into our new building to install all the lighting and hang the speakers in the middle of the night so as not to be noticed by any of the other tenants. This is the moment I am confessing to the world this felony, but I was in cahoots with other pastors. So I feel like, we get like the pastor like get out of jail free card.
At the end of the night, did y'all all just look at each other and take turns confessing to one another? And then that pastor would say, I forgive you. And there you go. And
I feel like most of us looked at each other and like kind of confessed that like, yeah, this isn't the worst thing we've done this week.
Oh, wow. All right.
I mean, to have the gall to church plant, to have that crazy energy, you kind of have to have that rebel spirit. So it comes naturally.
That makes sense. That's where all of our startup energy comes from. Well, I'm here with a guy that would never commit a felony, or at least not admit to it. The creator of ChurchFront, Jake Gosselin.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on. So I hear, Jake, that you're a liar. Is that true?
Depends.
Well, in this moment, you're about to be.
Okay.
We're going to get you to lie to us.
Your wife may be listening, but probably not your kids at this point. They're probably too young to get the podcast. So
We've got, 6 here? So 6 bullet points. Toby, I've already got a good feeling of which one is the lie.
Okay. So these are like his accolades, his greatest achievements, and one of them are a lie.
Yes. So let's give it to him. I was born and raised in Vermont. Number 2, I was an international handbell superstar. Number 3.
Can you be a handbell superstar?
I would guess we're going to find out.
I would think you'd need enough people to care about a category in order to be a superstar in it, but
I mean, that category does ring a bell. So number 3.
Well played.
I went to business school. Number 4, I almost bit my tongue off as a kid. I want that to be so true. Number 5, I've created over 400 YouTube videos. Number 6, my favorite activity is long walks on the beach with Toby and Blake.
Well, I know that to be true because we've literally that's how we started our morning with Jake.
Well, that was a long walk on the beach?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a very romantic moment. The sun rose and, we committed a felony.
What a good day. So I actually feel very confident, Toby, that it's either going to be the YouTube videos and he's lying about the number, or the superstar about like the international handbell.
Well, he made the mistake of telling us before the podcast that he was from Vermont. So we can write that off the list.
Yep.
Thanks, Jake.
Oops.
You seem pretty business savvy, so I'm going to assume you went to business school. We know you love Florida, so the beach makes sense.
I'm going to guess the almost bit his tongue off as a kid because I so want the handbell thing to be true, even though I feel like that's total nonsense. But I want that moment.
Okay.
So I'm going to say the tongue.
I'm inversely wanting it to be different on those two, but I feel like at this point people like to lie numberly. So I'm going to say it's the 400 YouTube videos.
All right, Jake, hit us with
We're
it.
locked in.
It is. That's not a lie. It's approximately 400. I haven't checked the actual
Oh
count.
my gosh, I just realized the over in there. That's what I should. You didn't say exact. That's how I missed it.
I've made a lot. Yeah. I don't even know how to check real quick on my phone.
You're good.
It's a lot.
What if it's like 397?
Well, that would be a mistake.
Oh, okay.
Not
An
a lie.
Omission.
But lying about that's not a felony. So
It gives you an idea of how many videos we've made.
So then what's your lie?
That I went to business school.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, okay.
Okay,
So-
we have some things to talk about, Blake.
Yeah, so tell us how you're an international handbell superstar.
So since I was from Vermont, and there's really not much to do in Vermont.
What a terrible commercial for Vermont.
Other than, and I went to a tiny little private Christian school, and tiny little private Christian schools, there's not much to do at tiny little private Christian schools.
Other than commit felonies.
Break into them in the middle of the night.
Oh, man. Their music program, I want to apologize to the listeners, getting over like a week and a half long cold. That's why my voice sounds so great right now, and I'm going to cough every 30 seconds.
You caught it from a long walk on the beach, right?
I guess so.
Yes.
I don't know. So the music program was this handbell choir at this school. So I played handbells from like 4th grade to senior in high school. And then basically by the time I was senior in high school, our little handbell choir was like so well known that a few of us from the choir got invited to play at the International Handbell Symposium in Florida. So it was like everybody from around the globe. We were like a part of this kind of like super handbell choir team. And
is there something considered like a larger like nerd convention?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
No.
That's the pinnacle of nerdness.
Yeah. And then after, like a bunch of like Japanese teenagers were coming up to us after wanting our autographs and everything. And that's a joke, but they were, they're like, it was people from everywhere.
Did you get to perform at Disney?
It was like one of the big convention centers up there or down there. Yeah.
Okay, tell us about the time you almost bit your tongue off.
Yeah, I was like 3 years old and I was climbing up on top of like a washer or dryer or something like that. Climbing up something I wasn't supposed to. And I slipped and I like slipped on my chin and I bit my tongue off so that like basically, well, if you bite your tongue with your, front teeth, like it makes a hole where you're like, whatever your main front teeth are called. I don't know what it's called.
It's the main
So
ones.
there's like only a bit of tongue on the side holding it on.
Ooh.
So I got stitches in my tongue.
Are you serious? Wow. Oh my gosh.
And then they fell out the first night and I had to go back and get them again.
What a terrible childhood.
Yeah.
He's in Vermont. He's got nothing to do but play handbells. He's biting his tongue off.
Total handbell nerd. So we buy handbells, and every time we get handbells back to the warehouse, our techs are like, what in the world are you doing with these handbells?
Dude, they're a lot. Those are gold, man.
I know. It was like you would think they're made of gold with how expensive
well, it's bronze,
they are.
Right?
Yeah. And it was funny. Some of the moments during COVID, like we got contacted from churches in Europe looking for a way for people to get involved in a choir that was COVID safe. And so they wanted handbells because they're we can socially distance, people can wear masks, and this is safe. So it was, fun to see churches trying to get
You even wear
creative.
Gloves when you're playing handballs too. Even safer.
Love it. Well, okay, so I hear you also wear gloves when you are working at ChurchFront. So tell us about that. Like, that's a crazy...
I don't wear gloves when I'm working at ChurchFront.
Yes, you do. So tell us about working at ChurchFront.
It's fun because it's really the job of my dreams.
And what is ChurchFront? Explain this to us.
Well, it is a education and consulting company for worship ministries. So especially like our little motto is helping you lead gospel-centered and tech-savvy worship. So it kind of addresses probably really all ChurchFront is the result of me solving my own problems, but then could easily solve other people's problems too.
Well, I would think you had gone to business school then, because every business book I read say the best business ideas come from solving your own problems.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, it's like you don't have to go to business school to learn that, right? It's like it's pretty common sense when at least in hindsight or whatever. But I had that journey of a worship pastor. I was like fresh out of seminary. So I went to seminary, not business school, and I was working my first full-time job. I was like contemporary worship music director in a church that had both traditional and contemporary, and I was the guy in charge of all the tech stuff too. And I just didn't know a lot of things, especially tech was a huge aspect of that, because most worship leaders kind of fall into the position as like, I know how to play guitar and sing.
Right.
Therefore, I'm a worship leader, right? That's like one out of maybe 4 or 5 different aspects of the job you have to actually be competent in.
You have to have hipster glasses.
Yep.
You got to have like colorful shoes that are, Vans or Converse.
Yep.
Yep.
You have to know how to pray heresy in between songs.
Absolutely.
Oh man.
It's the Babylon. This is like the Babylon Bee version of worship, how to lead worship.
You got to learn how to extend Good Father into a 12-minute song.
Yep.
Yeah, they're definitely prerequisites.
Totally. So there's, lots of areas you got to be competent in as a worship leader. I kind of had to stumble through all that, whether it's the technology, like what's a compressor? How do I use a compressor? Why should I use one? Like, they don't teach you that. I went to music school. I went to school to be a worship leader, got a BA in music and religion, and I spent lots of time analyzing symphonies by Brahms and stuff, but I never learned about how to use a compressor, right? Or like how to use presentation software or anything practical, right? Like higher education is like 98% a waste of time and 2% worth it for the networking and some of the things. They kind of help you become a learner, but it's just a complete waste of time. And I just didn't know all these really important things: how to keep a ministry organized, how to lead people, how to be a competent, just like a pastoral voice for your church. That's why I would say gospel centered and tech savvy, because again, we know how to sing songs and play guitar, but we don't know how to like pray competent prayers or something. But when we have to do it, that's where the whole praying heresy joke comes from. So these were very real struggles and challenges I had. And then I just, I'm one of those persons who like, I like to just fix things and make it better. And so I did that for my own situation. And then I also at the same time, about 6 years ago, had kind of this like entrepreneurial awakening and like who I am, how I'm wired. And I'm like, learned about, what you can do online now, especially with online business. You can, have your own little media platform by creating YouTube videos or a podcast or email lists. And then.
So when kids talking about, when they want to grow up, they want to be YouTube stars, like they're talking about being you.
Pretty much. But I feel like most people who are YouTube stars are never like stumbled into, they stumbled into it. They never like intentionally.
And you're not
like,
just
that's
playing
what I wanna
Minecraft. You're
No.
actually like educating church leaders.
That's the thing, is you have to be adding value to people, like in their lives, like teaching them how to do stuff. And that was for ChurchFront. Like how it got going is like, here's a hour-long tutorial of how to get Ableton to automate ProPresenter in a way that works. And I wish someone would have explained this to me, or I've come across other tutorials on it, but it was just horribly explained. That's what the other thing about what I feel like God has gifted me with is I can take something that's pretty complex and explain it to people in very easy terms. Like hopefully, my 4-year-olds will understand even like just some of these basic principles. So that's the other thing like that I feel like I've done and why I built ChurchFront is like, there's a lot of these things about worship ministry, tech ministry that they seemingly are very complex, and they are if they're not explained to you well. And they can cause a ton of headache if you don't get them right, if you don't learn them. So that's why I built it. So we have courses. We do coaching over Zoom.
I was going to say, what's the one that you do the most between the two?
For ChurchFront, like
Yeah.
what we do, like I would say I put more of my time into course development. Well, most of my time is actually like our YouTube videos, because that's what I enjoy doing the most myself. Like, and I always have. And now we have a team of course creator in coaching and just like people who are overseeing whether it's sales and the client experience. So those are the things that I all kind of like did myself starting out. But the thing that I still do today, because I love it, is the YouTube stuff. Like to be able to be like, hey, Blake, Toby, let's all come to Franklin and let's do a video about what Church Gear is doing.
I mean,
Like
most people do spend their careers trying to figure out how to hang out with us, so it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So
I spend my career trying to figure out what Blake is, and I wish you had a YouTube video
Could you
just
distill-
explaining Blake.
He said he's good at distilling people down or distilling concepts down, so maybe by the end of the day, he can give us a distillation of me.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So then tell us about like you do consulting. So I'm going to bet you have some interpersonal consulting. You see some like worship leader, tech director conflicts. At least we see that all the time. Like we hear these two roles kind of have a lot of conflict between each other. Do you have any advice for how they can work better together? You have any funny interactions you've observed between these two? Like maybe there was a church you were consulting for, you were like, man, these two, I thought they were about to kill each other.
Yeah, if you want to throw anybody under the bus.
Don't say names.
Yeah.
Don't say names. But
Unless it's Blake's.
I've been in that. I've been in those positions. Like maybe not. I think the most common one that's the most frustrating, and I've experienced this myself. And Adam, he's another guy on my team who's experienced this, is like worship leader and the guy who's in charge of church IT. Like, because it's not really, because again, in the world that I've come from, I've rarely worked in churches that even have a dedicated tech director, but they might have someone at the church who kind of oversees IT stuff or techie stuff, and they have very strong opinions about, mixing consoles or networking things or whatever. And that's where I've seen the most like interesting dynamics or conflicts. But the all that side, like, I don't even think it matters like which roles it is. It's just like, if you have to actively if you actively pursue to better yourself and better your leadership capacity, things will work themselves out, because either a few things will happen. So assuming there's maybe a scenario, I don't know if you want to give me a scenario that you're talking about with a worship leader and a tech director, but like, just be the bigger man, like serve one another. And then if you are doing your best to create a healthy culture, eventually unhealthy people can't stand it and they're going to opt out.
Okay, I'll give you a scenario.
Yep.
The audio engineer wants in-ear monitors to reduce stage noise, and the worship leader is used to stage wedges and only feels comfortable in those. How do you help those two navigate and find a compromise and understand one another's perspective?
Yeah. So, if I were taking this from the tech director's point of view or the audio engineer, I would make sure that I am well informed on how to produce a great experience of in-ear monitoring for my band. So like, just make sure, because you don't want to like be like, hey, here's a janky mono in-ear mix that I'm just going to give you, and you're going to go from having a much more natural sound of kind of the room and what's going on and a stereo sound to like, now you're listening to, because you watched some random ChurchFront video from 4 years ago, and now you have this random budget-friendly mono mix, right? And then it sounds terrible, and the worship leader's like, this is horrible. See, like, this is why we didn't want to do it. So I think just like make sure you're educated on like how to best set your team up for success if you want to implement these changes, and make sure you're implementing these changes not on rehearsal or Sunday. Like, come in during the week and talk through it, kind of get it all set up beforehand, so you're not like implementing something brand new for the first time with a whole team there, or like on a Sunday morning. And in that particular situation with in-ears, it's like, make sure you have the right infrastructure to hopefully provide stereo in-ear monitoring. Probably the most cost-effective way is those little, the P16 personal mixers, because you don't have to get a bunch of stereo wireless units taking up mix buses and all the stuff that comes with that. And then get some ambient mics for the room. So then really teach your musicians how to mix those in-ears. So I think you just have to go the extra mile. You can't just be as an audio director being like, hey, I want this. I want in-ear monitors. Okay. And then just like not expect to have to coach or educate people of how to actually make the best of that system. So
that makes total sense. I want to go back actually a little bit to the tech directors you work with, where it's like they're not either fully on staff, or they're not even like they're not a full-time tech director. They're like a volunteer that's like a super volunteer helping out and all that.
And they may not even understand production gear.
Yeah. Like, how do they do that? I mean, I had a church that I was picking up gear from recently where this guy's been the head tech director for a church for 12 years, volunteer. Like, he's the only guy there, and it's volunteer. And I'm just like, I don't understand how this is even possible. Like, what are some of the problems you see those guys running into that either you try to help out with, and not really even looking for solutions, just like what do you see in that kind of world where it's just the one person running the whole thing as a volunteer?
Yeah, so I think there's pros and cons to that, like having kind of the super volunteer who's been doing it forever, and they're the only person who knows how to run the sound and do all the things, right? And my advice to them is, number one, continue to develop yourself and your kind of knowledge base and like what's going to work well for your church, but also like you should be multiplying yourself. Because I think the biggest thing that I'm like, that's a bummer is when I see someone who's been a dedicated tech director volunteer for a decade at the church, they're like the only one doing everything. And then they it's almost part of their identity too much, where they're like, they don't let anybody else come in and be a part of that team. And that's just not leadership, like that really at all. And I think sometimes it's a result of maybe that tech director volunteer is underneath some maybe unhealthy leadership that doesn't understand the concept of like, it's not really good to have one person who's not even paid to have all this production stuff rely on just them. Like, that's just not smart for the organization.
Yeah, that's how you end up having to have someone break into a church in the middle of the night to get keys because you don't have backups.
Yeah.
People do that?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, no, that's a really great point, is continuing to multiply yourself. Like, I love
And then
that.
don't let your identity get wrapped up in your role. It's great that you're serving the church, but like, I've just seen it too many times because again, I've been many times the new worship leader who comes on board to help out, and like a change I recommend, like granted, I'm Jake from ChurchFront, right? Like, people.
You're big time.
Well, I'm
You
just
have
saying.
commercials and everything. They call it State Farm. It's weird.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah,
No,
Jake,
but
Jake from ChurchFront, though, not Jake from State Farm.
So, I'll come in and make a recommendation or a change of like, here's how to improve things. And people like almost feel like that recommendation is an attack on their identity. It's like, hey, like, or it's like, no, it's not. It's just like, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah, best idea wins every time. Yeah, I see that a lot too.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, speaking of mistakes that one's trying to avoid, I saw that you'd written a blog post about that when you're upgrading your church tech, like avoid these mistakes. So I wanted to get like your favorite one from that, or maybe a couple of those, because
I don't even remember what I wrote.
Oh man, look at this guy. I've forgotten more things than you'll ever learn.
How long ago was this?
Goodness, I don't know. It was on your main website, bro.
Maybe it was.
Blake does too much homework on these things.
We don't update that blog as much as we should, but so the main mistake.
Come up with a brand new one.
The main mistake is they're like, okay, we need new mixing console or whatever. And most people asking this question, they don't really even know the fundamentals of audio, like sound reinforcement and all that stuff, right? And they go to like church media and sound tech Facebook group or some random Facebook group online, maybe the ChurchFront group, and they're like, what mixing console should we get, right? And then they get a gazillion different responses and stuff like that, and it's just overwhelming and confusing. Or sometimes they'd be like, oh, we need like a better worship keyboard setup because we don't have like a keyboard rig that can produce the sounds we want, or we got an old acoustic piano that sounds like trash and we just want to be able to produce all their great sounds. And I did this like as a worship leader where I'm like, well, whenever I look at like the big bands like Hillsong or Tomlin, they have this like red piano thing that says Nord on it, right? Where the Nord is, the Lord is.
That's right.
And so I'm
Did
like,
you
okay,
come up
we
with
need.
that?
Then I go. Then
No, it's a thing.
Then I'm like, okay, Tomlin's using it, Hillsong's using it, or whatever. Big church down the road's using it. So that's what we need. Then I go to my direct report and says, I need $3,000 for this Nord piano. And then we get it, and I'm like, I don't know how to use this thing. This is like confusing as heck trying to make the right sounds, right? Like I know I can do it, but how do we do it? Whereas like there's much more budget friendly, easier to use solutions there that it would be way more effective for that scenario. But again, it's kind of like approaching like these upgrades with just a lot of ignorance, like not really knowing. And of course, like that's why we do what we do, whether it's with our YouTube channel or courses. It's like I just want people to be less ignorant about what they're doing with all these upgrades.
So I love what you're saying, and we echo that 100%. So when people are, they go onto these Facebook groups and they say, hey, everybody, give me your opinion. Should we get the X32 or the M32? And it's funny when some people are like, the M32 is way better. And the wisest of us will comment and say, bro, like find a local integrator, get them in there, and find somebody who knows where to start from the ground up. It may be that you don't need a new board. It may be that you need some acoustic treatment in your room because your room is terrible, or your speakers are. I went into a church in Florida, and new tech director, he had been there a couple months, and so we were buying some gear, and he showed me they have a Nexo Geo line array. And he said, when I got in here, this thing sounded awful. He's like, I couldn't figure out why. Like Nexo makes great stuff. So he said one day he just went up on a lift. He unplugged every single speaker except one on each side. And he's like, the room came to life.
Wow.
And he realized that they were all wired out of phase.
Oh, man.
And so, I mean, simple stuff like that, to have someone like you at ChurchFront. I know our lead tech, Brian, like he loves to talk to churches and help them figure out what is actually going on, what will actually help you in this moment. I totally echo what you're saying, that education over gear.
Another common mistake is just like really, I see a lot of like over-speccing of things. It's like, we need a new presentation computer, so I'm going to go get like a Mac Pro cheese grater tower to like spend $12,000 to run worship lyrics, right?
Or to grate your cheese.
Or even to be our live stream computer, or grate cheese or
That's
whatever.
a cheesy joke, Blake.
I put cheese on my popcorn. That's
stuff like that.
That's
like,
a callback.
I get because Adam, he's our main tech coach. Like, he's on calls all the time, and he does a lot of like specific kind of looking over tech upgrade lists and inventory and what things they need to change out or whatever. And almost once a week, I feel like we get a Slack message from Adam being like, hey, had a great coaching call with so-and-so, because we kind of keep each other posted on like how these conversations are going. Like, I'm pretty sure we basically just saved them like $10,000, and that they didn't need to spend on, X, some random thing like a Mac Pro tower. And now we can allocate more funds towards like the right mixing console, or maybe better microphones, or like, acoustic treatment or something like that. So,
Or paying the tech director.
Dude, that's another thing. I'm going to like, man, I don't know if you guys have
pull that
like,
soapbox out and get on it.
I'm going
Jake.
to pull
I can
it
feel
out.
it.
Because as someone who like runs, I run a business now. I'm very familiar with like the concept of running a like organization and managing capital, and then also worship ministry, which, the thing is about churches is like, it takes capital and people to do things. And it is very, very frustrating when I see churches, they're all gung-ho about like, oh, great, we're going to go do a, $700,000 or $1 million install with Summit, and it's going to be awesome. And like, we're going to have state-of-the-art everything. The room's going to be treated. And then it's like, my advice to them would be like, hey, it's probably a good idea to like, maybe even instead of spending so much on your capital improvements, like take some of that money and budget for like 5 to 10 years out, like a part-time tech director, audio, front of house mix engineer
That knows how to use it.
Yeah, that knows how to use the things, right? And like just budget depending on what area or city you're in. It could be anywhere from $200 a weekend to $500 a weekend, how many services. And like, I think that investment, which would be, I don't know what the math is of how much that is per year. It's a part-time salary, but like that would save so many churches, assuming it's a competent person they're paying,
Sure.
But it would save them so much headache just to have someone who's like always, paid to have that responsibility to manage these things. I don't know. That's a soapbox that I've been on.
So you see a lot of churches then that don't pay their tech directors, or they're really full-time volunteers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the thing is like, it's hard for a volunteer to have the incentive to invest in themselves more and continue to grow. And like the church can provide that too, but usually the people who get paid to mix are also the ones who've really, they just love it and they put a lot of time into developing that skill set. So.
No, I love that, because I mean, how are you gonna expect someone to run something if you're not paying them? It's pretty tough. I mean, I do this podcast for free, but
I thought about paying you, but yeah, I feel like I went to where the Nord was, and the Lord was there, and he was like, Blake gets so much out of this just doing it for free that there's no need to pay him.
Oh yeah.
So I was very
But
excited.
I want to clarify, like, this is at the churches that have, maybe the church at large has $2 to $5 million a year annual budget. Maybe even smaller than that. I'm not talking about like small church plant that, again, if I were to plant a church tomorrow, I would though work it into my budget to have some sort of like front of house stipend for someone who just like, you are competent, and if you're not competent, I'm going to find someone else who's competent to like get this thing done. Because it's just like what happens, the other way to think about it is you're already paying a lead pastor and a worship pastor to do their role in a lot of cases. And the front of house mix engineer, tech director is like the last step before it gets broadcasted in the room to people or online. And it's just like, they can literally just waste all the other investments that you've made.
So talk to us about what ChurchFront offers with, coaching, consulting, training videos. Like, do churches sign up for packages with you guys, or?
Yeah, it really depends on like what level of help do you need, because people are at different places. They're like, we have a lot of folks who are like, hey, I know a lot about like audio and stuff like that. We're fine there, but like now we got to build a new live stream setup. So like, just help me with that, right? So we've got a selection of individual courses, churchfront.com/courses. And that's mostly those courses you'll find there, all kind of tech related. They're kind of like one kind of a la carte options of like, I want a live stream solution. I want to learn beginner sound. I want to get more advanced in my mixing. I want a broadcast mix course. So people can, go ahead and pick up a course for a couple $100. And
what's the thing you're most proud of that you've ever created at ChurchFront? What's like the course you're like, this course is my baby right here. I love it. Of course it's my course. Well,
so the whole thing, all of these courses kind of work together to be what we call our
curriculum.
It's like we call it our accelerator program. That's like our flagship. Like when you join the accelerator program, you get 6 months of unlimited access to our coaching help, and you get lifetime access to like all of our courses. And that includes any of the future updates we have and stuff like that as well. So it's like, it's going to be like your really last like worship ministry education platform. You'll really have the last like investment you'd have to make into it, just because you'll have access into it forever, as long as the internet's around. So that, I'm proud of like all of the courses, how they come together. We still have to update them every single year. But the course I think I'm most proud of, we did a lot of updating, like our mixing for worship course last year. It's like, it just it covers a lot. It kind of takes someone from, I know the basics of gain, compression, EQ, or whatever, to like really like diving into advanced sound reinforcement stuff, like thinking through like your mixing blueprint of like where you're sending channels into buses and how you're processing those, and doing this on an X32, like trying to like, how do we make the most of these basic consoles that are out there? And also helping people focus on how do you get quality sound at the source. Like, a lot of people are like, how do I like do the right EQ and compression to make my mix sound amazing? Well, it's like, get the better source signal, and that's going to do like 80% of the work. The mixing console itself, you shouldn't be having these crazy EQs and compression and plugins to get a great mix. So that's probably my favorite course that we made.
Okay, so I first heard about ChurchFront through Facebook ads.
Yeah.
And saw your beautiful picture.
Yeah.
On ChurchFront on Facebook. And so I'm going to...
How long ago was that?
A year or two ago, I feel like. So when we as a company started having, full-time employees building our website, we needed profile pictures. Mm-hmm. And so we started doing headshots, and I wanted to appear to be as friendly as possible for these churches so that they feel like, oh, I want to talk to this guy because he's super friendly. So I took this headshot, and I'm going to show it to you guys.
There you go.
And it's a recreation. And I showed it to my wife, and she just started laughing. She said, that's not you at all. Like, that's not your personality. That just looks weird. And then another one of her friends were over, and she looked at that, and she's like, that seems like really, wait a second. She said, it's the 40-year-old virgin
that's hilarious.
Movie poster smile. So, Jake.
Hey, I think it's all in the angle, like of where you're looking. That's
Jake
what I think
from ChurchFront. If people go to your Facebook ChurchFront and look at this profile picture, buddy, did your wife look at this and be like, "That's not you," or is that you? Is that like, are you super fun and friendly?
I will
like
say
this?
it's way better than yours was, Toby. The lighting is significantly better.
Come on, do I look like? I just look like a creeper here?
You look like the
what?
guy that greets you at the bed and breakfast that kills you.
It's the angle, the camera, and the way your eyes are pointed.
It's the cocked eye. Yes, that's the killer eye.
That's what it is. Because the thing is, I'm like looking up at the camera. I'm looking like kind of directly at the camera. The key man. I think I copied that from Sean Cannell. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He's like a YouTube guru guy.
Okay.
And I was like, that was back. I think I took that in 2017 or whatever.
So I think we should put this in the show notes. Put 40-year-old virgin movie poster and then Jake's picture up, and maybe we take a poll. Like, is he looking?
I think can we put his picture up too?
Oh, that's what I'm actually gonna do. Yeah, Toby's gonna send me your photo and Jake's, and
no, because what the problem is, I feel like because what I learned, like I thought about, it's funny, the random thing, I've thought about the profile picture thing for a long time in like who had the best one. And I realized like you have to be kind of cropped in quite a bit for people to actually see your face. Like because like if you do like a normal headshot and you're scrolling on your phone or on your desktop, like you have to like look really closely or click on the picture to actually see the person. So that's why my big old face is there. Dude,
Okay.
hey, this
may be a
worked.
Facebook polls right now. So
Yeah.
You need to redo the photo though, because the current beard you have is the one you should rock on that photo. It's a good
Dude.
beard.
Well, I just started letting it grow out again like 2 weeks ago. So
Well, it's working for you.
All right.
Speaking of something that wasn't working, give us a disaster story. Now, you've seen a lot. You've been a consultant. You've been a worship leader yourself. I've got to imagine at some point you've had a bad setup at a church that was just bonkers, and you were like, why are you doing it this way?
I got it.
Or a worship service that went wrong. You don't have to say any names, just some stories.
Yeah, no, I mean the probably the most the one that comes to mind was it was like launch Sunday of the church plant that I was a part of back in, this was like beginning of 2018. So these were also the earlier days of ChurchFront, and I had we just had an underpowered MacBook Pro. It was like a 13-inch MacBook Pro. My pastor, being frugal, was like, "Oh, I found this MacBook Pro on eBay. It's like a, 50 megabytes of RAM." And
Hey, I get it. That's how Toby treated Brian's first computer to edit the podcast. He was like, hey, this will work.
Yeah. So it's like, and I was always a little skeptical. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's like it doesn't seem too reliable. And I think we even did have it glitch a few times during rehearsals or whatever, but we're like, oh well, we're gonna go for it. And then it was like opening song, the first launch service, like it's running ProPresenter and the lighting stuff in the lighting software. And I think I was automating with Ableton. And then like first song, it just like everything, the computer died. It just like crashed. And that was a bummer.
How did you handle it?
I don't remember exactly what we did. I think we
bought a Dell.
I literally have no clue what we no, I definitely didn't get a Dell.
I didn't know you could buy a Dell. I mean, I guess you could buy stock in a Dell.
I think the guys, the volunteer guys got it back up and running, and we just kind of made it work for the rest of the set. But that was just a pretty tough lesson about not having an underpowered computer.
So that was a 2 bourbon night, not a 1 bourbon night then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Blake, I need to make sure you understand that Dell is a brand of computers.
Well, that's why my ears heard it wrong. I was like, you
Dude,
bought a Dell?
That was the same weekend. Our twins were born 2 days before that, and then we had a launch on Sunday that
That's
weekend.
quite a weekend for you.
Yeah, so I don't. That's why I don't remember.
What do you think went more successful, the kids or the church launch?
Kids. For
Okay,
sure.
good answer.
So far, at least.
Yeah.
They aren't international handbell superstars yet.
Not
but
yet.
The
Not
hope
yet.
is still alive.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to have to pull from your wisdom one more time. So we always end on a tech takeaway. This is like something that you would tell every church tech. It can be philosophical. It can be technical. Like, this will make your Sundays better. Essentially, you already gave one, but we're asking for another on that thing that would make whatever input sound 80% better. But what would be a tech takeaway that you're like, this is mine. This is my unique advice?
Less is more. I don't know if it's my unique advice, but I would just say, just stop trying to fix problems that aren't there. Or like, here's an example. So in just recently helping kind of dial in a mix at a church, like I kind of showed up to the church and a lot of things were just like, it was just like putting a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid when it comes to how the EQs and compressions and all that stuff were set. It was like, and they have, it was just like overdone. And it's like, I'm just going to turn everything off and I just let me build this thing from the ground up because the PA was great. The room is decent. It's maybe could be treated a little bit more, but it's still like you have a strong foundation here, but everything was just kind of like completely overdone. And sometimes that's because maybe you have fancy Waves plugins and stuff that are there. So you use them because it's like, oh, all the cool guys are using these like fancy, compressors or whatever, gates or EQs. And especially, the way I view those things, like all the processing and mixing is just less is more. It's like get things right at the source. And then when you're using EQ, pretend that like you might have a 10-band EQ available, but like only use like 4 of the actual bands or something like that, or 3 of them to like get the sound you want. And if it still sounds like garbage, you probably get a problem at your source. Like, what mic are you using? Like, is the vocalist holding the mic right? Stuff like that.
Is the vocalist any good?
Yeah, that too.
Are
So
you
it's just,
playing on a Nord?
just yeah? So like less is more. I feel like in a lot of these things, like everybody just makes things so dang complicated. And I've seen that it applies to everything, like worship ministry stuff, tech ministry stuff. Even with ChurchFront, the more we've grown, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, I just don't need half the gear that we use, or like people like today showing up to do a shoot with you guys. Like I used to bring like 2 Pelican cases with like cinema cameras and lenses and all the fancy stuff. And now it's like people don't care. It's like less is more. I'm going to have 1 camera. I'll throw some lav mics on you. It'll get the same amount of views, if not more.
I'm really scared, though, if you keep saying less is more, Toby's going to look at the staff. He's going to be like, yeah, I need to cut a couple people, and I'm going to be that first cut. So
Who am I going to start with?
Yeah, so...
Who is unnecessary on this podcast? Is it me or the guest, or...
we need to move to a different tech takeaway. Well, Jake, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Is there anything you want to plug?
No, I'm good.
All right, Jake from State Farm or ChurchFront, one of the two.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
Blake, what's something that our listening audience won't have to commit a felony in order to do?
That would be writing a review for Church Gear. It's pretty easy. It takes about 52 seconds. Just pull up Apple, throw a 5-star review, and my quarterly goal is to get 100, and if I don't, I'll get fired. So it would be really nice if you could throw us one.
And they could break into their church overnight and leave the review there if they wanted.
Actually, I hear we get double the review points from Apple if it's done via felony.